Hello and welcome to a truly special episode of the Offside Musings Podcast. It's truly special because for the first time in the life of this podcast, we have a guest. And not just any guest, we have a truly distinguished guest. And so today is special in so many different ways. We have on today's episode, by popular acclamation and recognition, the most outstanding historian of African origin, the most distinguished historian studying Africa. And it's our delight on behalf of my co-host, Emeka Onyagwa, to welcome Dr. Toyin Falola. Dr. Falola is the Jacob and Frances Tanger Massacre Chair Professor in the Humanities and a Distinguished Teaching Professor at the University of Texas at Austin. Professor Falola has written or co-written so many books that is a scandal to count. Professor Falola has to his name, I believe, something in excess of 200 titles that he's collaborated on or that he has written. So this is by every measure, an extraordinary achievement for a scholar. And Falola has taught in universities in the United States, in different parts of Africa, and indeed in other parts of the world. He is a widely invited guest lecturer, keynote speaker at international conferences on Africa and beyond. So it's our particular delight on the Offside Musings Podcast to welcome you. If we wanted to do honor to your introduction, would actually spend the first hour of this episode doing that. So we're going to crave your permission and forgiveness to leave it at this very brief introduction of your truly spectacular scholarship. But it's our delight and happiness to welcome you, Dr. Falola. So on January 1, you celebrated your 70th birthday. So as scholars come, given the measure of your achievements, you are actually a young man. And I believe that a few of your admirers and fans and colleagues threw a surprise online birthday party for you. Could you begin by describing that experience to find out that you have been honored? By the way, I was invited to join and I was looking forward to it, but then I had a conflict at the last moment, so I wasn't able to be part of that celebration. Could you describe what it meant to you?
Thank you. And I will respond by saying that in the context of demographics and age ratio, I'm an old man. Of the set that we started the civil service jobs together after our first degree, 2 of us are left. And of the set of my primary school, 4 of us are left. And in the last 3 weeks, I've lost 3 great friends. Ayolukotun, the journalist, I'm older than him by a few months. Ogunkame, I'm older than him. And yesterday, this historian at Benue State University, we also lost him. And I'm older than him. So in the context of where we find ourselves, if you turn 70, just know that it's a miracle. You have to give a testimony.
Yes.
I have to pay your time.
Yes.
So preceding that event, I wrote an essay, Meditation on Nothingness, which circulated widely.
Mm-hmm.
And the core essence of that meditation on nothingness is that what does it mean if you are 70 and you have an individual success, but your nation and your continent and people are not successful? So what then are you celebrating? Are you converting yourself into a unique miracle and then ignoring what you see on your left and right and behind and in front of you on the streets and houses, people begging for food? As you go and buy the brandy to celebrate yourself, will you pretend you do not see teenagers selling handkerchiefs and banana and peanuts on the streets? And as you celebrate yourself and you tell yourself, okay, my 3 kids have university degrees, and so what? If you find an 11-year-old girl with 4 pieces of oranges on a tray, and you pass that girl by, what does it mean when you compare that girl with your own 3 children? And in that meditation on nothingness, I said, look, it doesn't work. And I didn't want to do it. In fact, the ceremony I knew on that day through premium times. Because when they called my wife told them, if my husband knows, he's not going to show up.
It sounds like somebody I know.
But when I showed up and I saw people and he looked with Obasanjo, I said, let me just be calm now.
Yes.
Let me just be calm. And as it was going, my wife slipped a note from my son based in New York asking me to smile. He said, show some enthusiasm. Show that you're happy, and then I began to flow along.
Yes.
But if you look at the mix, it's a mix that will make anybody happy. The young and the old, people who are the ages, who can be my father, people in their 90s, people of my age and people who are younger, and the various testimonies. So at the end of the day, I was very happy. But the greater surprise was awaiting me, because that event I was in Lagos. I split my time between Nigeria and the US. I believe Nigeria is livable. I don't just say it on paper. I split my time there. This year I'll be living more in Nigeria than in the US. I've always been doing that, no apologies. Because it will be a contradiction in which all what I do every day is to write about my place, my people, and my country. And I say I will not be able to live among them. I'm sure if Achebe did not have that car accident,
That's true.
no way he would not be living in Usuka.
That is true.
And Shuenka lives in Abeokuta and things like that. I would not be able to justify it. Spending 12 months in the US and complaining there's no electricity. Let me go and experience it myself. In December, I went to the village where I used to be in the 60s. And I stayed there for 3 days. No electricity. It didn't bother me.
Yeah. Because I bet that in the 60s there was little electricity there.
It did not even exist.
Yes.
And the mosquitoes came, they did their normal songs.
Yes.
I sang along with them. And people came, we did communal food, we ate rice with our fingers. I was very happy. My emotions were restored. I had a balance that New York or California, London can never produce. And that organic interactions keep me going. And you are a literary person, you're a creative writer. And you know without that organic experience, the words will not come. The proverbs will refuse.
That's right.
The experience becomes diminished.
That's true.
And this organic connection, if you track the writing say of Achebe, for instance, I think, by the way, I just completed a book on him.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
Which is different from what few people write, because I'm locating his creative writing in specific historic moments. You understand? It's
Yes.
Kind of book.
Yes.
How does a book speak to the nation? In other words, I turn all his books into an archive, which is not what you conventionally do.
That's true.
Literary appreciation. And you could say, when he began to live permanently here, I think he wrote, and his last one was Antilles of the Savannah.
Antilles of the Savannah, yes.
After that organic experience, as it disappears, right, began to produce a new kind of writing. So that by the time we got to, that was a country, that becomes an anthropology, an ethnography. You understand? We will not describe that in line with Arrows of God.
Arrow of God, no.
Which is a work of imagination. Right? There was a country, is what I do.
Yes.
It's such a media.
Yes.
So it's just now took over my own profession.
Yes.
Because it could as well convert there was a country, right, into a story.
That's true.
But that story will be very difficult based at Bat and later based at Brown. It won't just flow just as no longer it was flowing.
Yes.
Writing that kind of novel in Lagos on Suka. Doing the fight on campuses, doing the fight with your colleagues.
That's right.
Doing the arguments, reading the daily newspapers, and shaking your head at what's going on.
Yeah, that's true. Yes.
Thanks for the question.
So, to sort of stay a bit with the uniqueness of your biography, I understand that when you were born, your particular birth date was not recorded, so that in a sense you produced yourself.
Yes.
By choosing January 1, which is a symbolic kind of choice, because January 1 is the beginning of a year and the beginning of a term and so on. Could you speak to that, how you came to that choice, and what does it mean as a being who is one of the most treasured intellectuals in the world? And because I remember reading, of course, it's a different kind of experience, Frederick Douglass's narrative.
Yes.
And Frederick Douglass talked about how the African captives who were brought in this country were deprived of their birthdays, that the plantation owners made sure you did not know your birthday, because this was one way of stripping something essential of your humanity. Of course, in traditional Africa, we did not have birthdays in the conventional way that the West does. So can you speak to that experience of not knowing the specific day of your birth and how you came to the choice of January 1?
Thank you. So, you live in a surveillance society. So, over the years, the West has constructed a surveillance society. And a surveillance society, you must know the date of birth and the date of death. I'm from Ibadan. If you go there and say, how many people died last year? Nobody can tell you.
No.
Because it's not a surveillance society. That data is totally irrelevant. I told you he died last year. What do you want to do with the months he died?
Yes, and the date.
What we do with the data in a surveillance society is different with what we do with the data in a non-surveillance society. Because what counts, because they actually count the dates. Because they have to, because you come from an age grade society.
Yes.
Igbo is an age grade society. You may not know your specific date of birth, but you are not a member of an age grade that is older than you.
No. That's right. And of course, age grades are, in my hometown, ranged in 3-year spans.
Yeah.
So people born within a 3 years. So, and it's very interesting because when we have a meeting, they say to you, okay, you go and bring the beer. You are there on the lower end. You are our boy.
So, if we broaden this conversation, which we should broaden just for purposes of understanding, many people in my generation did not know the names of their dad. And they did not know the names of their mom. I think it will be straight. First of all, it's straight. You can't call your dad or your mom by their name.
Nope.
So we did not actually know.
Yeah.
And third, remember, it's an Anglo-Saxon tradition to have a surname.
That is true.
Yep.
It is, we combine, say, the Yoruba, the Oriki, with your first name. And you see part of what happened when they were trying the recruitment into the police and army. They would say, what is your name? You say, it's Amado. What is your last name? You didn't answer. So where do you come from? Say Shinkafi. So you're Amado Shinkafi.
Shinkafi.
So the head of the army, Sefawa, that is the name of the town. The current head of the Nigerian army, Sefawa. He's from Sefawa.
What town?
Near Sokoto is a town.
Wow.
Jega, who used to be INEC, Tairu Jega, that is the name of his town.
His town, Jega. Wow.
Shagari is a town.
Yes.
Kano is a
Is a town. Yes.
I'm Muhammad. What's your last name? You don't answer. So you are the son of the Prophet.
Yes.
You are Muhammad.
Yes.
When you go to a lorry, there's no house without Bello. So there's a proverb. How do you recognize a Bello in Ilorin? When 1/3 of the city is Bello.
Yes.
So this is even bigger than when you were born. And you could see, in my own case, we have 3 last names, depending on who you speak to in the family. There's Falola, there's Adediran, there's Akinola. We are all the same. It depends on when they ask you the question. Then we extended to Republic of Benin. There are Falola in Cotonou. If you go there, we are blood families.
Wow.
We are just the same family. And then last November, they made me a chief of the guard.
Oh.
Yes, I'm a knee.
Mm.
And as we are tracing the Falola, the king, we now have people who reorganize their name among the Eve.
Yes,
We
in
are still
Ghana.
the same.
Mm-hmm.
It's not still the same family
Wow.
that became. So now when you come to the date, my own is different from what came later in affidavit, in which they're changing the dates
Mm-hmm.
in line with civil service regulations,
Yes.
which people were doing.
Mm-hmm.
Because they enter primary school at the age of 12.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's right.
Yes. So they cut 6 years out of their age. And you
Yes.
know, one of the presidential candidates, Tinubu, nobody knows his actual age.
Yeah.
Because I think one of his daughters is not too far in age.
From him.
Yes. So in my own case, luck is on my side. My father became wealthy and he became a prominent member of the St. James's Church. And they gave him a prime lot at their cemetery, which is still there in Okebola. When you enter the cemetery, which they keep now, because there's no more land to bury anyone there, so it has become an historic archive.
Mm-hmm.
You will see his tomb there, James Addition of Falola, died May 1953. So that settles the problem for me. I was not born after May 1953.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah.
So, and my granddad, who was a pastor, married to a Muslim, the only name. So, on the 8th day, when they give you names, in many African cultures, people give you names. Your parents will give you names. Your neighbors will give you names. So, I collected so many names. Now, it's the name you use for me automatically signal to me what side of the family you are.
Okay. Yes. Yes.
So because my mother's side gave me names, my father's side gave me names, and the Muslim side gave me names. I am Ibrahim.
Oh.
To the Muslim side of my family. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
They named me Ibrahim.
Ibrahim. Wow.
So I can be going on the street and somebody will say, Ibrahim, it's me.
Yes.
But I'm not a Muslim. You understand?
Yes.
My grandfather called me Abiodun. Abiodun is somebody that you born during a festive season, which is usually a 7-day interval between Christmas and the New Year.
Yes.
Even now, if you hear people called Abiodun, yes, very rarely would they use Easter. Very rarely would they use Easter. They usually use Christmas or the New Year. So that means I was not born in November.
Yes. This is really fascinating archaeological work. Yes.
And then I had brother because my father married 4 wives. And my mother, I don't have any full brother or full sister.
Okay.
I was the firstborn of my mother and the lastborn of my father. The 3 other women produced kids who are older than me. The one born before me who died during COVID, I know his age. So, and I cannot be older than my brother. So the margin of error will be by months, not by
Yes. Yes.
years. So I could have been born December 25, 26, 27, 28, 29,
Mm-hmm.
1952.
Mm-hmm.
But Abiodun hands when you finish your chicken and rice
Mm-hmm.
by the first or second Sunday of January.
Yes. Oh. Wow.
Because after your plate of rice and chicken,
Yes.
you can, and you are born, you can no longer be Abiodun again.
Abiodun. It's ended. This is really, really, really.
I just did the work myself.
This is really fascinating.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I got a question for that, right? So, 70 years ago, with all due respect, very, in this era, the preeminent historian for Nigerian history, in my opinion. African history. Yeah, the preeminent. I'm going to eventually ask a question about the Kenneth Dike school and how that relates to you. But in terms of in 70 years ago, how widely was the adoption of the Judeo-Christian calendar in Ibadan at that time?
So I have to broaden the question for you. I was born at a moment of great transitions. And I'm very pained by contemporary Nigeria. And it pained me for a different kind of reasons. First of all, we were poor. The majority of Nigerian populations in the 50s were poor by this current standard. You understand? We used to joke that a car cannot kill you in Ibadan. We were playing soccer on the main road.
On the main road, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was coming, you pack your game, and you resume your soccer game.
Yes.
How many cars were there? The city was very clean. Because when we woke up, the first thing we did was to clean. And when I tell people that the city was environmentally friendly, they think I'm making it up. Because there were trees in many places.
Yeah.
And this is not even an Ibadan phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
There's no part of Nigeria that I've never traveled to. Even if you go to a place like Nsukka, right? Whether it's the valley or the mountain, in spite of the destruction of cutting trees, you still see the vegetation.
That's true.
You understand? They're still there. The organic beauty is still there. As you drive from Enugu to Nsukka, you can see it. And the city was like that. So we had that relationship with the environment. So we're able to do things. But that transition, in line with your question, is that nothing was resolved. Because you can't frame your question as if it was resolved. It was not resolved. So, we were worshiping Shango in my compound in the 50s. Nobody complained. There were Muslims in the family. Nobody complained. My grandfather married a Muslim. She was praying 5 times a day. I saw it. I lived with them. It was only during harvest and festivals that she followed the pastor husband to church. Nobody was complaining. You understand? That ecumenism, nobody was complaining. So, during the Ramadan, I joined people to play for 30 days, music to wake people up, to go remember to fast. And they will give us signs and give us food. Nobody was complaining. You understand? And the masquerades will come out. And nobody stopped the masquerades from coming out.
Yeah, yeah.
And my house was near one of the most powerful masquerades, Ololu they call it. Nobody was complaining, you understand? This came much, much later. So that grounding in religion, Christianity was spreading, but it was not grounded in opposition to Islam. It's not, there was no Pentecostalism of this variety.
Yes.
That was the Aladura movement. So nobody was saying, don't be Catholic. And do you know, Muslims attended church with us.
Wow. Wow.
We celebrated Ramadan with them. So what do you do at Christmas when you make your food? Are you going to give the food only to Christians?
No.
You give the food to your neighbors.
That's right.
Irrespective of their religion. You understand? And if somebody was going to Mecca, which was a big event, they would do this big party when they were going on Hajj, because you may not come back. People didn't come back. A place called Darfur.
Yes.
Darfur is mainly Nigerians who are stranded on the way to Mecca and coming back.
Yes.
Really?
Very true. Very true. There is a huge Yoruba community in Darfur, yes.
Because they were not treated as Arabs, you understand?
Yes.
So you are going to, the
Trans-Saharan.
It has the western routes, the central routes, and the eastern routes. So Mansa Musa took the central route in that famous pilgrimage.
Yeah.
But there is the eastern route, the area we now call part of Central Africa, Nigeria, Chad. So you have two options. You could go straight, and if you go straight, it means you are passing through modern Chad, modern Niger, and you are going up through Tunisia, Algeria. You understand? But you can make a detour to your right. You understand? The area where you now call the Kanuri, you move southwards, it ends in Sudan. So people going from areas of Lagos walking, the area we now call southern Nigeria, New Libya, when they go up, they realize if they move to the right, it allowed them to minimize parts of that big Sahara Desert and join the routes that the Queen of Sheba took to see Solomon. Our people, their sense of geography was extremely developed, extremely rich and developed, because what that did was to reduce your crossing the desert. And you now join the Horn of Africa, right?
Yes.
Where they were taking prostitutes and slave labor as far back as Pharaonic Egypt. The areas you call Nubia.
Yes.
Nubians. You are going to run out of money. So as they ran out of money, no problem. They stayed in Darfur.
Wow.
And to those who are able to go further up, on coming back, they ran out of money. Because you cannot make that journey. Even today, with Africans running to the Mediterranean, you cannot make that journey at once. You need to stay.
Different stops.
And Darfur became a colony.
Wow.
So, to go back to your question, that journey, and you announce you are going to Mecca, you are not flying. You are walking.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
All the Christians will come to that ceremony. All of them.
Wow.
And give you money. And pray for you. That ecumenism
Yes.
of the 1950s.
Mm-hmm.
But issues around capitalism were not resolved. Occupations were not resolved.
Hmm.
University education was not treated as mandatory. That came later.
Yeah.
Of all the people who ended in primary school with, only 2 of us even went to high school.
Wow.
There was no need to.
Mm-hmm. You
Because
could get a
there
job in the civil service
were
and so, yeah.
occupations.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I learned occupations myself after leaving primary school.
Hmm.
I became a bricklayer. I became a butcher because we did not denigrate occupations.
Mm-mm.
You know, today, it is today you now say you don't want to be this, you don't want to be that.
Mm-hmm.
You just want to go to university, even when a certificate is very useless.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But in the 50s, nobody would, and even a woman who is talking about you go get married.
Yeah.
As soon as they see your 2 breasts,
Mm-hmm.
get married.
Yes.
So that moment of transition affected what you call religion, society, occupations, and values.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. So let me ask a question about, there's something I think unique, I'll use that word, unique about your scholarship. When you look in the West, when you look in America, in Europe, in Asia, most of the African intellectuals who are prominent in those spaces had at least some of their education outside of Nigeria. But you've risen to the top of your profession with credentials, academic credentials that were exclusively obtained within Nigeria. And that says something powerful. I don't know if you can speak to that experience and how that shapes your pedagogy and shapes your relationship with your students and colleagues in America, as well as your relationship to Nigeria.
Correct. The starting point, the role of communities, which we have vacated. There was a school in eastern Nigeria. Is it at Umuya here? That if you look at the staff list, it's like what you now call a private university.
Is that government college Umar here?
Something like that. Government college. There were PhDs teaching there.
Yeah.
Something like that, and masters teaching there. In which communities were embedded in the way those students were educated. Molusi College, where I did my higher school, the first principal was Taisholari. Before I went to create his own school, Mayflower. The Ijebu people built that school. Igbo, which produced the head of Nigerian civil service in the name of Afolabi Dapo, close to the village where I stayed in December. The community built it. Lagelu University, the community built it. You can keep mentioning this and the names. Olivet, the church built it. And they built them with a lot of integrity, and with a lot of dedication, all of them. And they were constructing the universities attached to regionalism in the spirit of federal competition. They were very serious universities. Whether it was Zaria, whether it was Unstuka, whether it was Ife. they knew and consciously said they will create excellent universities. I've read some of the papers. They do exist. The visions were to produce intellectual workers for the nation that they imagined. One may criticize them for days on end. You can criticize Azikwe the way you like. You can criticize Awolowo the way you like. But you cannot say they did not have vision. Yeah. Indeed, the better example is Sardauna. You can say Awolowo had a degree in law, Zik had degrees, was an intellectual. Ahmadu Bello finished at high school. Then his intellectual vision of that high school education was far more expansive than everybody who followed up until Buhari. Go to Zaria and look at Samaru, look at the landmass, look at division of agriculture and education and everything. And look at Ife, in spite of the decadence of the infrastructure, you will marvel. Go to Nsukka, as I've done many times, and review the programs that they put in place. How can you be taught by Adele Afibo? You will not even pass, as he was so tough. Indeed, I think he produced only one PhD in Rafunjuku. Sorry, not Rafunjuku.
Yes.
No nonsense, no cheating. You get an F, you get an F. You understand?
Yes. Yes.
So the dedication of those early teachers, early founders, those of us who benefited from that education 60s and 70s, before structural adjustment, everything was good. So, remember, the tradition of external examiner. My final year papers were taken to School of SOAS and Birmingham. These papers were being shipped abroad for grading. You understand?
Yes.
Not that I now endorse it, that we should be shipping papers abroad. We've gained our independence. But that training, the dedication of the teachers, I think it was at par. And teaching by books. And then, in my own case, I now was so lucky. They posted me to Government College, Makurdi, which later became a university.
Yes.
The library was the best in the state. And they put me on campus. I was living there. And I went to the library. And I saw books I've never read in my life. I said, what?
Yeah.
And I began to read books. So I've actually read more books during my years as a youth corper than in my undergraduate years. Because I was just reading the books. I discovered all the classics in African writers. I was just reading them.
Yes.
As soon as I finished one, I would rush to the library, get another one. So that on top of that good foundation, I also did what we tell students to do. Build yourself up. And I discovered my talent in what you now call journalism. We're not calling it journalism. I began to write for newspapers as a youth corper. New Nigerian, Daily Times. I was just writing for them.
Yes.
And then I took a diploma in journalism. You know, you could do a standard. These things are gone. There used to be
correspondence.
Yes, there
Correspondence
used to be
courses, yes.
The post offices were good.
Yes.
In fact, I did GCA level. I spent 2 years in high school. I did my exam as an external examiner.
Wow.
I didn't finish high school. I was a high school dropout.
Wow.
But through those level,
yes.
I had a diploma in journalism. I took a diploma in salesmanship. I took a diploma in marketing.
Whoa.
Because the mailing system was very efficient.
It was.
Not anymore.
And I remember, I don't even know how mail in Nigeria is, gets circulated. It's crazy.
You mean today?
Yes, today.
Today is far more efficient than UPS. It's far more efficient than FedEx.
Oh, the post office?
Not the post office. The mailing system.
What is it like? Is it by Okada?
It is the most efficient thing you ever imagine.
Yes.
And I tell people, human creativity is boundless, endless. It has no frontier.
Yes.
See that downfolder bus that carry people.
Yes.
They carry mail.
Yes.
Wow.
In fact, I do know that you can send something to any part of Nigeria on a bus. What they call luxury buses.
Just go to the garage.
Yes.
With a box.
Yes. Yes.
Just pay the driver.
Yes.
Give the driver the phone number of the person who's going to collect it.
Yes.
And the person collects it at the garage. It's faster than the person would deliver.
That's right. That's
called priority mail.
So it's entirely out of this necessity that has become, as I said, the mother of invention.
An informal sector that is extremely efficient.
Yes.
There were a lot of very esteemed people who people like Rotimi Williams, Chief Rotimi Williams. He went to external system law. I believe his brother as well, Akintola Williams as well, did the same thing. City Guild in London, and it wasn't at that point in time. It wasn't just the name of going to London. There was a certain level of academic rigor that was associated with that, which is something we're finding out was actually probably maybe even higher for a school set up in Nigeria. Because when you go back and read the British writings, even if it's Lord Lugard, Margaret Parham, Flora Shaw, and their intentions, they wanted more diluted schools in the South. And it's not to be controversial, right? They wanted more diluted schools in the South. They had some schools they had in mind that were going to be top-notch. Hope Waddell, King's College, eventually Queen's College. Then in the North, they had Barawa College, which ends up producing the vast majority of the leaders from the North. So it's amazing to hear that they intended for these schools like, at that point in time, the vision by whoever for what people call the Greater Ife, which you went to, and the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, University of Ibadan, then University of Lagos afterwards. That the vision then was that they were going to create very well-groomed, top-notch graduates. That's an amazing, because I mean, hearing it from you, just put it in context is like, okay, that makes sense.
They did. And look at the external. We need a book on that. Akindele, who became one of the richest Nigerians, with an external degree. The man in his 90s who has a university at Ado-Ekiti, the distinguished...
the lawyer?
Oh, that's Pa Adebayo, right?
No. It's not... it's a lawyer.
The university is named after him.
Yes. Is it... oh my gosh, it's not Labisi.
No. He took his law degree as an external.
Yes.
He became
Olani, it's not Olani Beko, right?
I'm very leader right now. That's
No. Babalola.
Okay,
Yes.
So there was a tradition. Said, okay, until 1948, and subsequently after, if you wanted a university degree, the options were limited.
Mm-hmm.
You can do it as an external, yes, which some people did.
Mm-hmm.
There were people who collected BA. They would say BA this, BA that, but they didn't leave Nigeria. Yes. And then you could come to the US, people like Azik, Banda, Nkrumah, and go to historically black colleges.
Yes.
Or like Awolowo, you could go to UK, which you did. But look at the trajectories. Path to Nigerian freedom. Will you believe that it was written by a student?
It's amazing.
Do you believe that Bonaparte was written by a second-year student?
Yeah, it's amazing.
But the foundation of language, especially of grammar, was very well laid. It was very well laid by all those missionary schools in which they were teaching this language in a highly professional manner. We've lost that.
So at what point? So yeah, that's the follow-up. So at what point, how do you trace the trajectory of this decline that whose consequences and effects we're living through now? And what are the factors that produced it, and when did that start?
Very good. I do not know whether you read No Longer At Ease.
Yes, of course.
Yep.
Because, and the way he set it up it's very brilliant. You move from an organic community, right?
Yes.
With interest in citizenship, in development, in youth. And it takes just one person and weave a community history around him. And then he began to use the degree in a different community.
Yeah.
And it crashed.
Yeah. Yeah.
The question, was that crash inevitable? And I will explain it very carefully because of your audience. Right, Frantz Fanon anticipated some of this crash because he said, why give power to this elite? He saw it. What Daddy Gio will now call prophecy.
Yeah, Daddy Gio.
So he saw it. 1958-59, when Nkrumah noticed that they were stealing money and they were fighting, he called a meeting and said, why are you fighting? This money is like an elephant. And when an elephant dies in the forest, everybody goes with a knife. But you don't go back home empty. There is something for you to cut. And they began to cut the states. And they began to cut state resources. Did they have an option not to do that? No. So, track the trajectories. Let's start with the African American society. Let's start in the US. Blacks in the US. After the American Civil War, and they began to produce free black people, what could you do if you want to accumulate wealth? Zero. They promised you 40 acres
And the mule.
Which they did not deliver.
Mm-hmm.
You understand?
Mm-hmm.
Suppose you wanted to become rich. They say, okay, let's go back to Sierra Leone and Liberia. Maybe they left, some left.
Mm-hmm.
And subsequently, some people made money from the industry associated with the head, because blacks historically and today, the head is the most important object of the body.
Mm-hmm.
Not as in the artifacts of the head that we praise, but in the imagination of aesthetics.
Yes.
Black people spend a lot of money on their heads.
Mm-hmm.
Their face, their hair,
Yeah.
the bleaching.
The Ori.
And then, and then some people began to say, okay, let's make money from the head.
Yes.
And some did. But notice carefully that without the money for Black Americans to inherit, they broke into wealth from sports and entertainment.
Yes.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
You see Oprah Winfrey. And it was the power of the television and the syndicated media that could deliver what you do as a golf player, as a tennis player, to millions of people that brought that money. You can talk of Magic Johnson, Hakeem Olajuwon, the two tennis superstar sisters.
Yes. The Williams.
You know that sports. And we can talk about entertainment. You understand? Why? Because there was no foundation of wealth. The best foundation of wealth is to inherit money.
Mm-hmm.
I would not be here.
Mm-hmm. If you
Dangote's son.
Yeah.
If only not to embarrass him, he would cut me a check.
Yes.
So, now go back to Africa.
Mm-hmm.
When the British accused Azikiwe of creating this bank and other things, they wanted to create a scandal, they negotiated. Suppose we wanted to make money in the 50s as the Europeans were leaving. They already blocked you because the biggest investments belong to them. And next, they gave to the Indians. Next, they gave to the Lebanese. Remember, by 1960, I think Nigeria had two biggest millionaires. Everybody is a millionaire now. Including myself. Because if I convert $5,000,
you become a millionaire.
So, Ojukwu is a millionaire.
That's the Ojuku's dad.
Claim money, not stolen. From transport business.
Yes.
And subsequently, Okotiebo became a millionaire.
True.
And a courier, because they were using him to connected to contracts and bribe to finance the political party. Suppose now you needed money. You could only do so via the state. And that began the journey of what I call bureaucratic corruption. The Nigerian model of corruption is bureaucratic. There's corruption in America, but it's not a bureaucratic corruption. It's a corporate elite corruption. You understand? I'm a professor. If I want to steal money, okay, But where is the money for me to steal?
Yes.
Is it on the table? So, Professor, I need a new computer. No problem. Go to the computer store and pick it there.
Yes.
Oh, Professor, we'll put it on your table in 2 days.
Yes.
I want to go to Nigeria. Go to the university travel. It's an invoice.
Yes.
And
Yes.
collect your ticket.
Yes.
But those who sold the computer to me
Yes.
and the agent, and all those companies, they can cook the books.
Yes.
Me as a professor,
Yes. You get the product.
and I tell myself, when people ask me, if you're a minister, you're not going to steal money? I said, do you know, at the age of 70, I do not know whether I'm a thief. Even as I'm talking to you today, I don't know whether I'm a thief. Why? I've not seen money to steal.
Yeah. And I dare say that it's getting late, right? So the odds of seeing it.
I didn't have to say something. Now go back to that bureaucratic corruption. You give them state power in the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
They saw the budget. And
Yeah.
they began to tap into it.
Mm-hmm.
But the danger of bureaucratic corruption is that it is too democratic.
Mm-hmm.
Corporate elite model is a privatized form of corruption.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to steal money in America? Okay, no problem. First of all, go and establish a business.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And look at all the regulations to sell your hamburger to the army
Mm-hmm.
for $20 per piece instead of $2. Now, in the case of Nigeria, it is a successful democracy of corruption. The school teacher, the professor, the post office person. You want a passport? Okay, you go to Abacha, there is no form.
Yeah.
There's a form in Enugu. You get to Enugu.
Yes.
The form that is free is 150,000 naira.
Mm-hmm.
Who collects the money? Somebody who finished from the University of Nsukka,
Mm.
who wants to send his own son to a private elementary school.
Yeah. Mm.
You want the passport? Okay. Pay for it. That's democracy.
Mm.
And on the way from Abakaliki to Enugu, the police will collect his own share.
Are you get to Enugu?
Yeah.
Yes. If you say I'm not gonna give the police a share. Uh-huh.
So they collect their own share. The custom will collect his own. The police will collect his own. The professor will collect his own. The elementary school teacher will collect his own. And so we've lost control of that process. Well, its emergence began in the 50s in terms of how you've governed a place for so long, but there were no investment opportunities, no wealth accumulation opportunities. These are children of farmers. Nothing to inherit.
Yeah.
What did Awolowo inherit from his father? Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
What did Dike inherit from his father?
Nothing.
Nothing.
And Obasanjo.
Ah.
Yeah.
So as soon as they got that state power, and then greed over the years now follows. So that whether it's the governor of the central bank or the president of the country or the minister, everybody understands that the primary purpose of power is theft.
It's interesting because there are all kinds of ideologies in terms of, I call them ideologies, I don't know, that people put forth, like it's tribalism, it's neocolonialism, it's this, it's that. The way, I believe the way you just put it, like the continuation of handing over power in, making corporatism governance in one. So everything is in the state is what leads to, essentially what you're saying is what leads to all these other branches that seems like tribalism. Because even if you say it's tribalism, it's like, okay, is it, are all the Igbo people enjoying this, or are all the Yoruba people enjoying it, or are all the,
Actually, most Nigerians cannot be corrupt.
Mm-hmm.
Even theoretically.
Yeah.
You can do small things like if you buy Gary, they take a handful out of it.
Yes.
They can do all those.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But
don't you feel it's inbreed?
Sir?
No, I said.
So you're speaking to the factor of access.
You need access.
Access,
Oh, okay.
which is why you have said that you don't know because you don't have access.
Access. So if you're a farmer at Ogidi, okay,
Mm-hmm.
go and pray to God.
Yeah.
Steal money. So, is the local government created next to your house to steal the money there?
Mm.
What can you steal as a farmer?
So let me. This is really quite intriguing. This analysis that you have made, and I'm wondering then because one of the things that we try to offer on this podcast is a sense of the way forward. So, given what you have defined as the peculiar character of corruption in Nigeria and the ways in which corruption is democratized in Nigeria and has become bureaucratic in its nature and operation and so on. What strategies are there?
Privatize it.
Privatize it. So describe it, because I think that also, when you spoke to this efficient mail distribution system that you described, which became privatized and then it works. And Nigerians can also see it in the airline sector, for example. I remember when in Nigeria it was a monopoly of the Nigeria Airways. You would buy a ticket and you'd have to bribe to get a seat on the flight, and it happened to me quite a bit. And then now you have a number of airlines available, and they actually beg you to come buy their tickets and their services, essentially. So are you saying then that a capitalist formation is the answer?
So why are you saying you want to totally eliminate corruption? Because that's not possible.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, there are certain things that theories cannot produce.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot produce theories of zero corruption.
Mm-hmm.
It is just going to exist on paper.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because human beings are agents of self-destruction.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
And among that self-destruction is a component of greed.
Is it every human? Are you talking about?
Human beings self-destruct.
Okay.
In some ways, you can argue that's how we're programmed.
Mm-hmm.
We self-destruct.
So how do we account for historical progress if we're programmed toward self-destruction? So is there a countervailing impulse towards self-regeneration and self-enlargement?
We call it incentives.
Okay, incentives.
So if you put your car on the road,
Mm-hmm.
and the road is good, and you can see 5 miles ahead,
Mm-hmm.
and you see 65 miles per hour,
Mm-hmm.
you are going to run 80.
Yes. Yes.
The reason why you don't do that is an incentive.
Yes. A police officer.
Now, most times they won't catch you.
Mm-hmm.
But once they catch you, they will punish you. That's an incentive. So traditional societies function well, efficiently, based on two concepts, guilt and shame. Shame you see, guilt you don't see. So shame is you violate community values. They put you to shame. You understand? But suppose they don't catch you. Your guilt will kick in. Because spirituality, religion, the gods and the goddesses will now begin to pursue you. So you go to bed and you dream a witch is about to kill you. Because earlier in the afternoon, you had sex with somebody else's wife. One of today you go to an herbalist.
Yes.
You confess.
Yes.
And make some sacrifice.
Yes.
So that you can sleep well.
Yes.
So when you eliminate guilt and shame, we now substitute them for Western institutions. You understand? The Western law, the Western judicial system, the Western punishment. And in doing it that way, there was a time when the incentives were respected. But by today, no one respects those incentives anymore. Some people will tell you, why don't you steal 1 billion? Go and hide it. They will put you in prison for 3 years. 3 years will fly in 3 minutes now.
And then you come out and you become a big chief. the Ibranization factor.
So the incentives have weakened. But when I say privatization is a concept that says that why don't you create an efficient entrepreneurship and bureaucracy and allow the few people who manage that to steal your money? Because they are delivering services and products, and then in combination with your power elite, they criminalize corruption, and then they punish those who want to join them.
Wow.
You understand?
So they limit the span of participation in the business of corruption.
Yes, the king who killed you for adultery.
Yes.
As you find in the story of David.
Yes.
Who looked outside his window, committed adultery.
Yes. Yes.
The biblical story.
Yes.
Could have committed adultery.
Yes.
But he was saying, look, I'm a king. I can't commit adultery because there's nobody.
Yes. Higher than I.
To punish me.
Yes.
But you, as a citizen,
yes.
you cannot commit adultery.
Adultery. Yeah.
It's a Chinese model. You understand?
Yes, that's true.
So the members of the highest bureaucracy in that privatized corruption, they can have a bank account in New York. But as you go lower in that bureaucracy and they see that bank account,
yes,
you know what they do?
Your head is off. Yes. Your head is off.
They will kill you.
Yes.
You understand? So you can say, okay, Dangote, you are building a refinery for us. We allow you. But your staff, they will go to jail. How we are going to arrive at that will depend on how the entrepreneurship model becomes more and more successful. You may not like Obi Kubana, but you know he generates wealth. You understand? You may not like the guy who produces cars,
Oh, okay. Innocent.
In a Newi, innocent Chukuma.
But you see, the objects that he produces.
Mm-hmm.
He produces car.
Mm-hmm.
What is wrong to say, okay, central bank, I will give you access to dollar
Mm-hmm.
because you're producing cars and you're employing people.
Mm-hmm.
And you are maximizing productivity,
Mm-hmm.
and we see the results.
Mm-hmm.
And then Alhaji wants to use that money to marry a third, fourth wife. He said, no.
Yeah.
I'm not going to allow you to do that.
Yes.
But am I saying something that is profound? It is not.
Mm.
The aristocracy that developed Japan in the 20th century, it was corrupt in the 19th century. It reformed itself, went into production, became centers of technology, and they left that corruption behind.
So what was the initial incentive for them to say? Was it for them to say that our form of corruption is unproductive, as it were? So we need to make it more to become efficient in delivery of services and goods so that we can sustain this model of corruption.
So one year, 22 trucks were missing in New York.
Mm-hmm. Government-owned trucks or private?
Collect garbage.
Yes.
I think eventually they realized somebody was using them to carry some drugs and dead bodies and things like that. If that same year, if Mali lost those 22 garbage trucks,
mm-hmm.
all the streets would be dirty.
Mm.
You understand?
Mm-hmm.
One time, a university not far away from us lost 20 million to Enron.
Wow.
On electricity.
Mm-hmm.
But they paid everybody's salary.
They paid what?
Everybody was paid their salary.
Absolutely, yes.
Very good. If they stole that amount of money in Gambia,
mm-hmm.
you will not be paid for 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
So, it is not just only for a state to be corrupt. There must be 2 elements
mm-hmm.
which are missing in the case of Nigeria and African countries.
Mm-hmm.
What is this absorptive capacity? Because you have to measure the absorptive capacity of corruption. So ASU says, give me this amount of money to revitalize the universities.
Mm-hmm.
But the accountant general stole more money than they were asking for.
Yeah.
You understand?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you cumulate the money they were stealing,
mm-hmm.
it's so much that Nigeria lacks that absorptive capacity.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if they steal that amount of money in the US, everybody will still be paid.
Yeah.
The middle class will still remain.
That's right.
That's one.
Mm.
The second, okay, you know, there's honor among thieves.
Mm-hmm.
Thieves are not equal. You understand?
Yeah. Yes.
So, what do you do with the stolen money? That is the second variable.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do with the stolen money? If you use that stolen money to create an industry, a manufacturing business, a poultry, a school, you understand? What you have done is to transfer that money to the state, and you are spent to yourself, and you are spending it on behalf of the state for precisely what the state will use that money for.
At any rate.
You understand?
Mm-hmm.
You are a good thief.
At least not so bad.
But if you now take that money, right, which they now do in Abuja, as soon as you steal the money, you convert it to dollar. Because you cannot be carrying 4 Ghana must go.
Mm-mm.
4 Ghana must go, convert it to a briefcase of dollar, 100 larger bills.
Mm-hmm.
and you ship the money outside of the country,
Mm-hmm.
you've done enormous damages to that country because you are not allowing that money to work for that country.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? You are denying the use of that money
Mm-hmm.
for productivity,
Yes.
for wealth creation, for job creation. So you can say, okay, I cannot stop people from stealing money, but I can not allow them not to take the money outside of the country
Mm-hmm.
through a process of banking regulation.
Yes.
And I can work with my international partners and say, if somebody from my country has an account of 2 million in Chase in Boston,
Mm-hmm.
can you please let me know and let us know where the money comes from?
That's right.
You understand?
Mm-hmm.
Or within your banks locally, you can say, okay, just as they do here, can I just go to my bank and put $1 million there? They will come after me.
That's true.
What is my salary? Where do I get the 1 million from?
Mm-hmm.
So you can create a policing system internally. At the very minimum, what does we do? We allow the use of that stolen money
Mm-hmm.
in some kind of productive manner, unless you want to put it inside your house,
Yeah.
which they also do.
Which they do. And then some rodents might get to them, and some of your domestic staff might have their hands on them, and then that in fact redistributes the money or directs the money.
So wait, there is something that you touched on here where it's talking about the current capitalist system that we have in Nigeria and how, I'm just trying to summarize, in terms of how, okay, this is how we probably will be better off if we can get to this point, which I'm sure you're going to get to. But even as you get to that, there's another point where I sit down and I'm like, okay, prior to the coming of this capitalist system, right, we didn't have that in Africa. And I'm wondering, okay, is that better? When I say is that better, we're thinking of, for instance, land ownership wasn't a thing. You came into Africa, you had exactly what you were talking about in terms of communal guilt. You had a communal guilt. You had, it was bestowed on you in some degree. Well, all these titles that used to mean something, you were a chief in Igbo land or and I think it's something you've chronicled in some of your books. It's something I just had this thing I've read on Professor Ronke, but that's a much wider distance in terms of invention of woman. It's also the epistemology of Yoruba culture, which I think is very similar to Igbo culture in so many ways. It's now that are we trying to merge what is our culture? Because I was also going to get to that eventually in terms of linguistic thinking, how the absence of our linguistic language also affects our outlook. And when I say that, it's a little grammar, but in absence of thinking in our languages, how it affects our outlook of life. People being able to just sit down, and I know people think of it like I was talking about it with OK yesterday, like I got,
You lump so many things together, but I'm a school teacher.
all apologies.
Separate. Mm-hmm.
I've been an elementary school teacher, high school college professor. So I will take all the fragments and I will shock you by starting with, forget the present. How many Igbo men or women did you know traditionally who ended their lives very wealthy?
Who?
Traditionally.
Traditionally.
That's what accumulating.
Mm-hmm.
You're accumulating. Remember, Okonkwo,
Mm-hmm.
they're asking you to take titles. You know what a title does? Do you know what a title does?
Financial responsibility.
No, it takes your wealth and it transfers something honorific, symbolic to you in exchange. and that's one way of maintaining the Republican ethos in society. They don't want you to threaten society with your wealth. So they say, we're going to call you a buefi. You keep a lot of cows, you feed the community, but the community has taken your wealth away, stripped you of much of it, and then they give you this title.
That's a far better way to put it. I was just going to say financial responsibility you can't get away from, but that's a way to put it.
You start all over. So they always approach me. Undo all of them, or you're laughing, come on, become a chief.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Because it has serious financial consequences. Your entire, I have a friend who became a chief at Abeokuta. It cost me $100,000 US. You understand?
Wow.
You are starting all over. Understand? It encroaches upon your investments, upon your savings. You understand? So in creating that egalitarianism via title, right? Multiple titles mean you are starting all over. And you could see the anguish in Okonkwo, how this Bonaparte was structured. It's important to understand that element very carefully. That what you call lack of or existence of capitalism was mediated by various variables. First of all, everybody had access to land. What you did not have access to was labor. You cannot get labor, 18th century, 17th century, except you multiply your kinship.
Absolutely.
How do you multiply your kinship? You give potency to polygamy. Understand? But polygamy has been exaggerated. They tend to assume that all Africans were polygamists. It is, who told them? I don't know, because it's not true. The mechanisms of polygamy were so complicated. Today, it is easier, Emeka, for you to take a second wife. Because that is just the relationship between you and Jane, your second wife. But suppose you must have in-laws. Suppose your second wife has 4 brothers, 3 sisters that you must send to college. The father of Jane needs a Mercedes Benz. The father of Jane needs to go to a hospital.
Yes.
You will tell yourself you don't want to.
Yes.
You understand? Polygamy means you're expanding your kinship at a cost to yourself that you must bear, because there are consequences. Bear in mind, Africans, we do not approach relationship from what you call love.
Yeah.
In fact, there are many African languages where that word does not even exist. The substitute is called responsibility.
Yep.
What we cannot call love, we call it responsibility.
That's right.
You can't say you love your wife, Emeka,
Yes.
and the mother died, and you have no money. You can't say you love your wife and not tell your wife's sister to school.
You explain it so well.
But in that concept of responsibility, understand, not everybody can become polygamist. But the point they miss over and over and over again is that for you to take a second wife, it offered one of the biggest challenges to any man. should you use that money for yourself or should you use that money for your son who must marry? Your resources are limited. Your son is already 20. He can have his own house. You've already given him his own farm. He needs a wife.
Yes.
So the money you had, do you want to use it to get your own third wife? Or you want to use it for your son to get his own first one? Do you know it's very, very agonizing?
Yeah.
You know it's a very difficult decision.
Oh yeah.
Not be able to. The mother is saying, please use this money for my son to get a wife. You understand? Your mother's junior wife is saying, go and marry another wife so that I can be going to the market and become independent. I'll free myself from all your domestic chores.
You put it so well, because it's there in your books. You put it so well.
Polygamies and these are European inventions.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they exaggerate this number in terms of ratios. You can't just walk into a village and say, I want to marry 4 wives. The women have to be there in the first place.
Or as European anthropologists will say, you want to buy another.
You put it so, and for those who want to go in depth, I forgot the name of it. You have that book for the women that want Professor Oyeronke Oyewumi has a phenomenal book or something like there's the misconception where she talks about it. Okomi in Yoruba. Okomi is not singular. It's not in philosophical. It's not relative. It's collective. it's for a whole compound. You are the wife. You know, African societies are structured on age grade, like we touched on earlier on, which is kind of weird because even when modern scientists talk about it, they talk about 3-year gap between children is the ideal thing. But we already had that long before they agreed. So it's like when we're like, look, there's a whole concept. So the way you explain it is phenomenal.
Now comes a bigger issue that people don't talk about in relation to both democracy and capitalism. We call it convention. Conventions. We've not studied conventions adequately enough. What we do is that we study constitution, European derived. I've written constitutions for 2 countries in my office here. You can write a constitution. You understand? Give yourself a week. You can create a country and write a constitution for it. I was asked to write a constitution for one country, and they said they want to set up a team. I said, please don't waste my time. I will give you the draft. Go and give the draft to your team, and you can ask me questions. You understand? That is not difficult. But there's what we call conventions. Conventions are beliefs, cultural practices, you understand, that are not written anywhere in any constitution. They're not written down. But those conventions affect what you call democracy, and it affects capitalism. So that you can't just go to say, I'm going to Harvard Business School and go to Nigeria and be telling them textbooks. It is, you are going to be confronted with absolute failure. So let me illustrate. One day they asked Obasanjo, are you a Christian? He said, yes, but not from the waist down.
Yes.
So remember, the Chief Justice, Atiku, Obasanjo, almost at the same time, right? I think the 3 of them had almost 100 children.
Only God knows. Only God knows.
You understand? That's a convention. And when Monica Lewinsky and Clinton, they were making a lot of noise, Africans were saying, what is this? Can you deny the president of a country the luxury of a girlfriend? That is totally absurd. You understand? But that is a convention. Right? The convention in the US may say, don't do that. But can you be in Aso Rock, a woman walks in and Buhari gestures, take her to the guest house and say, this is not a crime. If you establish a business in Lagos, please don't listen to any advice they tell you about the salary. Because the day the mother of that staff died, you are going to fund the funeral expenses.
That's right.
You understand?
That's right.
If he falls sick, you are going to pay for the hospital bill. If he gets married,
you go.
You find a letter on your table that you are the chair of the occasion.
Yes.
You know what they're telling you?
The financier. The financier. You fund it.
Listen carefully.
Yes.
If you like, keep paying that person every day non-stop. The day you don't meet any of that responsibility, you are an evil man.
That's true. That's true. That's true.
Witch.
That's true.
That is convention.
Yes.
One day, on my mother's side, they call it family meeting. And I went. And they praised me, they did everything. And they said the purpose of this meeting is for me to formally announce the monthly salaries I'll be giving to my siblings.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, why not?
They said they're not as successful as you. And the reason why they're not as successful as you is that you took the destiny of 4 people.
Yes.
And you stole the destiny of 4 people. You wanted your own destiny.
Yes.
And you are using the destiny of 5 people.
Yes.
4 of which are not yours.
Yes.
To make $5,000 as your salary.
Yes. Hey.
You understand?
Yes.
Consequently, I hold them. This is a meeting, though.
Yes.
Like you cannot be a destiny thief.
And not pay reparations. Oh my God.
That's the convention. You understand? The president of Nigeria cannot call the governor of Central Bank and say, I want $3 million in my house by tomorrow. He will say, yes, sir.
Yes. And deliver.
Who gives monkey banana?
And deliver.
Not only will he deliver,
He will add something.
he will steal 5.
Yes.
Deliver 3 and pocket
2. That's right.
Yes.
But by the way, it happened during Abacha's regime, right?
Yes.
Abacha would send to the central bank to bring hundreds of millions of dollars, which he kept, and will give to settled traditional rulers and so on who came. And once the head of state did that, then the central bank, not just the governor, but the staff, the senior staff, will be taking their own.
Yep.
So you set up a convention where that sort of thing is allowed. And
yes,
and in fact,
that's a convention. And this convention runs through how we manage all institutions of society. You understand?
Yes.
Whether it's the university, whether it's the bank, that is conventions underwrite virtually everything.
But
you can't keep a big man waiting.
Yes. Okay. So now that this is brilliant analysis, but I'm sure that you also agree that certain conventions in Nigeria. Forget the Monica Lewinsky thing, which most Africans found silly. Okay, but let's look at that convention where a head of state can send for the central bank governor to bring in millions of dollars and no questions asked.
Yes.
Obviously, those kinds of conventions have ruinous consequences for the country.
Correct.
So how do we come to a moment where there's general acceptance of
that you cannot do that,
that you can't do that and you shouldn't do that, and that those sorts of conventions must be nipped in the bud?
Your constitution said you can do that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the convention says you can. Yes.
So, I do not know whether you follow the work habit of current governors. They live in Abuja, basically.
Yes.
There's even a governor in Nigeria, as we speak. He stays 3 days in his state.
Mm-hmm.
When they ask him, why do you stay 3 days in your state? He says, in the age of the cell phone and WhatsApp, why do you need to go to your office?
Mm-hmm.
You understand?
Mm-hmm.
See how the Constitution defines the role of a governor. Convention has turned a Nigerian governor into an emperor.
Yes.
You
The
understand?
Nigerian president into a god.
Yes. Those are conventions.
Mm-hmm.
It is not written in the Constitution
Nope.
that a governor is an emperor.
Mm-hmm.
And see how democracy has been bastardized to say that thank me for building a road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And for paying salaries.
Thank me for paying your salary.
Mm-hmm.
That's your job.
Mm-hmm.
And you now do a 1 mile road and you lobby the president of a country to come and commission it.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? I don't know whether you've had the opportunity of visiting a Nigerian governor.
Oh, yes, I have. Emeka and I were just discussing.
It can take you 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it can take you 3 days. You are going to find 50 people. Whether he's walking into his car, people are walking along with him.
Mm-hmm.
He's walking back into his car, in his reception room, in his office. So that governor, like a Nigerian University Vice Chancellor, does not even have 5 minutes to develop any vision.
No.
Nope.
The mistake people make in Nigeria is that they are confusing politics with governance. They are not the same. We have politics, but we don't have governance. We have politicians, but we do not have managers. Because governance is far more difficult than politics. You understand? Politics, we are just talking and talking and talking all day. The governor of most states, they spend more time resolving conflicts among politicians than the very work they're supposed to do. So because governance does not actually require that democracy that we keep talking and talking and talking about. Do you need democracy to build roads?
No.
Do you need democracy to build electricity?
Nope.
Do you need democracy to create jobs?
Nope.
What you need is governance. And that you can approach that governance from democracy, if that is what you want to do. But you can also approach it from bureaucracy. You can approach it from selection. You see, the woman that wins a beauty pageant in any community is actually not the most beautiful. She's just one of the members that compete, and they must choose one. You understand? In the kind of democracy we are practicing, we've eliminated good people.
Yeah.
We've eliminated technocrats. We've eliminated non-corrupt people. You understand? And we find ourselves in a situation in which you do not know the choice to make.
Mm-hmm.
If you put two people down, you're from Oyo State, vote for this governor or that. I don't know whom to vote for. You say there are 3 presidential candidates coming, I don't know whom to vote for. Not that I have the card to vote.
Mm-hmm.
Am I going to vote for Atiku?
Mm-hmm.
Am I going to vote for Tinubu? I can tolerate to be, but I may refuse to vote for him. But because what happens is, but if I create my own list, you understand, my own personal list, and I say Jibril Ibrahim, Jega, I can create a list of 30 people. I will say, okay, I can vote for any of them from their track records. You understand? That at least they will create vision. At least they will say, okay, we are not going to steal your money. At least they will say, we will meet you have the way in terms of a development agenda. But no list is presented before me.
Yeah.
Understand?
Yes.
I can say, had party told me to the list.
Yes.
I'm very comfortable.
Yes. So this is actually a moment perhaps to segue into, so we have elections coming up in Nigeria in just a little over a month. And for a lot of people, the idea is that this is the most consequential election in Nigeria's history, that Nigeria has come to a really bad place over the 8 years that Muhammad Buhari has presided as president. That insecurity, violent attacks, terrorist acts have really been democratized in our space, and that there is hardly a space in Nigeria that can boast of a sense of stability and security. That the government has come to a place where it frequently has to borrow money to meet its recurrent obligations, to borrow money to pay its own debts, which has become, in a sense, such an oxymoron. So given that, as a historian, do you see this moment in this same kind of grand rhetorical play with which some Nigerians describe it? Are you a bit more sanguine about the moment that we're in now? And then I have a follow-up question about the presidential candidates and so on.
Okay, let me start in 1462.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Before you were born.
I'm excited, man.
Just a few months before I was born.
And the ship came, the Bight of Biafra, Bight of Benin. The ship was named Jesus. That's the name of the ship, by the way. That
Yes.
Jesus of Lubeck.
And then they carried people, and you are crying because you are going to cry because you've never seen it for the first time. That human beings could be chained, and then you won't see them again. You're going to. It's just going to turn your emotion, unless you are rock, without any feeling. And then you cry, and then you do what people do. You begin to curse. Whoever did this, God will punish them. And then you face out your generation. You don't see the end. Another generation came. They repeated the course. None of you, 1462, 1562, 1662, saw the end of that problem. But you thought the problem would go away. There's a theory, we call it the theory of wishful thinking. In that theory of wishful thinking, you imagine decadence, decay, institutional collapse, so many things about a people and a society, and you think they will just disappear magically. In that wishful thinking, you begin to do what they did before the 15th century in another land, the land of Islam. By the time of the fourth caliph, they were looking for a Messiah. They said, this Messiah will come. Bear in mind, Muhammad himself was a Messiah to reform Judaism and Christianity. There was peace. By the time we got to the third caliph who wrote the Quran, they killed him. The fourth caliph, Ali, some people call it the origin of what we now call soccer. They kill him, they beheaded him, they cut off his arms and legs, and they were using the legs to kick his head. You understand? And the Shiite movement emerged, and they were looking for a Messiah. Do you know that Messiah has not come?
Wow.
Some fake messiahs had come. Some had been successful, like Ahmadi who created Ahmadiyya, and some other things. Where am I going with this? I think Nigerians have this thinking that when things get bad, there's going to be a solution, forgetting that things can get worse. Track it. Every president has been worse than his predecessor. So, you may not like Obasanjo, that's fine. But you cannot compare him with Jonathan.
That's true.
And you cannot compare him with Buhari.
That's true.
Who told you that the next president is not going to be worse than Buhari? It's an illusion, you understand? And the earlier they recognize that, the better for them. That societies can actually keep degenerating and keep degenerating and keep degenerating. The second, which you find in all missionary journeys, the history of prophets. And you can start 1st century AD, the creation of all the disciples. What happened to all the disciples? Not different from what happened to their masters. Most of them came to a very brutal ending, just as Jesus Christ was crucified.
Yes.
They killed many of them, and they executed some of them. You understand? Where am I going with all this? We have this moment that this Messiah will just come. Suppose that Messiah just come. But that Messiah in form of a president, right? Given the existing structure and institutions, cannot do many things. There is no president of Aso Rock who can tell a governor not to steal money. Because it is not his money. There is no president in Aso Rock who can tell the police officer not to collect bribe on the street. It's not going to. You can make all the statements you want. Then who's going to listen to you? Because it's the institutions and structures that produce these practices.
Yes.
And until we fix those institutions and fix the structures, our salvation does not lie in Aso Rock.
Yeah.
A contrary argument is that you need leaders to fix institutions. No problem. No problem.
Yes.
But is there a collective norm that exists in contemporary society to create those institutions. Your driver and your mechanic, they collude each time you repair your car.
Mm-hmm.
Any invoice they give you to fix anything in your house is overinflated.
Mm-hmm.
You understand?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody with a form of power in Nigeria converts that power into an advantage.
Mm-hmm.
What do you bring for me?
Mm-hmm.
From the custom officer, the police are. Your boys are loyal.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, how do we collectively say we need to fix these broken institutions, and we need to fix those structures?
Mm-hmm.
Because it is beyond the capacity of just one president to do.
Yes.
So at some point in time, you and I have to begin to rethink this very structure and institutions. To what extent can we build communal spaces that are empowered? To what extent can we capitalize the poor, doing small trade, small businesses? And what mechanism can we use to transfer power to more women and reform the domestic spaces, reform market spaces? And these are far greater challenges because this political elite is reproducing itself. They're just reproducing themselves, and they are reproducing themselves. They are not on top of the game. They are not reforming the institutions. They are not reforming the structures. And until we do all these major institutional reforms, structural reforms, one person, in combination with his cabinet, they can try their best, but the end result will still be disappointing.
So I take
before you ask the question, I was going to say there's something Okay always says that he puts it like the Nigerian leader at the time he has to leave or she leaves office, mostly he's ensures that they make sure by all accounts that they select somebody that is worse. It was just what you were saying.
Yeah.
But
so it becomes mediocrity mandating a deeper level of mediocrity, really. Yeah. But let me sort of, and I think you did the pushback yourself by speaking about the agency, the potential of a leader to begin to move the nation in the direction of changing the structures and the conventions and the norms. So the other question I have to ask you, I mean, clearly, and this is a point I've made on this podcast numerous times, right? That there is this, in some quarters, exaggerated expectations that if a certain candidate wins, Nigeria is going to turn into an ideal society. And I've been at pains and I've received a lot of abuse by telling people that you are likely to be in for a shock. You know, I remember just 9 years ago, when Buhari was running for president and was waving a broom in the air and saying, change it. And famously, I did an interview on Ben Television in London. I did an interview here in the States where I said to people, waving a broom is not a vision, is not a manifesto, is not a program of action. It's actually a very jejune and, in the end, childish gesture to wave a broom. A broom means nothing. And people are saying, change. I said, what are we changing into? And what is the mechanism for achieving that change. And some of us were shut down, some of us were told that, we were wailing wailers and so on and so forth. I was a big critic of Jonathan, but people felt that I was defending Jonathan simply by telling them that Buhari had not defined a vision of where he wants to take Nigeria and how he's going to get there. So 8 years later, some of those who were most vociferous in those attacks have become chastened and have become some of the most strong critics of Buhari. But having said all of that, how do we achieve this restructuring, this retooling of our norms, the acquisition of different, more positive, more development directed norms and conventions? How do we, for that matter, how do we, is there any political party currently, so sort of to reduce the question, is there any political party in the space currently in Nigeria that gives you a little hope that perhaps they understand what it must take and that perhaps they're going to move the nation in the direction of changing everything that needs to be changed?
Political parties in Nigeria are actually not political parties the way we define political parties.
That's true.
In terms of contestation over visions and ideologies.
Mm-hmm.
Political parties in Nigeria are agglomerations of ambitious individuals and warlords who want to use the political parties for their own specific interest.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first point. The second point is politics is a full-time career in Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
When a politician wakes up in Nigeria, he doesn't have a job.
Mm-hmm.
His main job is meetings, you understand?
Mm-hmm.
It's just going to meetings and meetings, another meeting and meetings. So, and their livelihood is dependent on that power. That's just the means of their livelihood. So that dislodging them from that power becomes a problem by itself. Even at the local government, if somebody loses an election at the local government level, and you pass him by and say, "Honorable, sorry, it will cost you. Your life not go better." And in some cases, what we are going to see next is his obituary.
Yep.
Because he's borrowed money, he's invested everything, he's engaged in conflict with families and friends. And as far as he's concerned, losing that election is basically the end of his life, the end of his ambition, the end of his goal. So, are these political parties agencies of transformation? None has ever been. For some moments, APC, NCNC, AG in the 50s, they were projecting themselves as instruments of transformation. Talking about the creation of universities that we spoke about before, building roads, Ikeja industrial estates, and things like that. But the current political parties, that is not their mandate. The broom is not a vacuum cleaner.
Yeah.
So it's not their mandate. Their mandate is to have allocation of power on the basis tribal elites, and having allocated that power, to use that power for purposes of getting what you can do. And you have to give them credit in terms of they're very clever.
Mm.
because these positions are many. The prime ones, Ports Authority and MPC, we all know. Minister of Finance. But they've created so many agencies that there is money. You can even become the chairman of council of a university.
And they're making money.
Yes. Collecting some of the budgets of the university. Forcing the vice chancellor to give it to you. You know how so many parastatals, ministries of fresh fish, ministry
of fresh fish. Ministry of point and kill.
By the way, you know it exists.
Oh yeah.
It does.
The ministry, but
yes.
Is it parastatal of some kind?
Yeah,
yes.
Fish, something like
yes.
That. There's so many that if you count the number of parastatals on our Greek, there's so many. The parallel institutes doing the work of universities. So, all creating positions for people within the states.
By the way, I always reference this, your reference in your book, rent seeking opportunities.
Yes.
I love that reference. I love that reference more than anything. Right?
So that's what political parties do. And that's why they have to fight bitterly for it. That there must be something for you. So by April, people will stop going to Aso Rock to see Buhari. They won't be going to him anymore. Because it's not going to be the one distributing the largesse.
Yes.
Whoever wins after him, whoever is going to occupy power in May, that's the person everybody's going to his house.
We'll go to, yeah.
Because that's the person who is going to say, you are going to be my minister. Okay, you've been living in the US for so long, you'll be my ambassador.
Oh my God. So let me. Yes. Yes. Do you have a read? Do you have? I'm sure that you've been following the campaigns, especially the presidential campaigns in the February 25 elections. Do you have a sense of the candidate that has potential, or how it's likely to end, perhaps a runoff, or do you have? Yeah.
I am addicted to making that calculation.
Yes. Yes.
Obi is shot by 4 states to become the country's president. And I do
by 4 states.
4 states. On the most generous of my calculations. And I do not know how he's going to get to those 4 states. Obi will be short of attaining 25% in 12 states, the Sharia state.
In 12 states.
By my own calculation. I will give him 11 states. Just give him. I will give him the entire Southeast and South-South. Call those 11 states. But that still is not going to make him the president of Nigeria. I will even be generous and give him 25% in Lagos. But that still will not give him the 24 states that he needs. I think.
How about Benue and Plateau?
I've given him those.
Okay, you have.
That's still why it's shot by 4 states.
Okay.
It's still shot by 4 states. After all my generosity of giving him the states with large Christian population, it's still shot by 4 states. By the constitution of the country. So, bear in mind, anywhere where Obi does well, it means article fails.
Mm-hmm.
If I give him those 11 states, Atiku has already lost 11
Those
states.
11 states, yeah.
You understand? Because you can't have it both ways.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I cannot say I'm not giving Obi South, South, and Southeast, but I will give them to Atiku.
Mm-hmm.
That's not an analysis.
Yeah.
You understand? And once I give Obi all those states, including Benue you mentioned, Atiku has lost an election,
Mm-hmm.
which remains Tinubu. You understand? Historically, I think other than one Abiola moment, Awolowo was able to get, because Awolowo's strategy was Middle Belt, Ijaw people, and Yoruba people. That was how he gave up on the North. Awolowo he even wrote it down that it's not going to work. But it could build a coalition of the Middle Belt, Ijaw people, and Yoruba people. That was the way he was doing his own electoral map. So, if we go on traditional voting pattern, which may be altered by the insurgency of Obi movement, but I'm assuming that insurgency may not deliver the votes. Just an assumption. If Tinubu clears the traditional Southwest, it's going to get Kogi and it's going to get Kwara. You understand? What he now needs to acquire victory is those Sharia states. In those northern states, they've made a very strategic calculation. That Muslim ticket, as bad as it looks, is very strategic. Because what it does is to virtually ensure their consolidation in the Sharia in those 12 states. It just ensures it. Because the whispering which they will undertake is that they are voting for two Muslims. That's how they whisper. And in choosing Shetima, the strategic game was to weaken Atiku's Northeast base. That's very clear. Because now the Kanuri area is gone. It's not going to get anything. It's gone. So maybe Adamawa, where it comes from, and his votes have been declining over the years, which now leaves us with the Northwest, in which, let's say they split it. Let's say they share the Northwest. Tinubu will still win. How can Obi get any of the Sharia states? I think their calculation may be not to get any of them. Their calculation may be, where can they get 25%? And they can be looking at Kaduna State, Southern Kaduna. They can be looking at Nasarawa. But they're just areas they have to forget. In fact, if I were him, I would not even waste money to go and campaign.
Yes.
In those places.
Yes.
Because I know I'm not going to happen.
Yes. But
So,
yeah, a place like Kano, though, Kwankwaso is a strong
it's
fact.
split into three. It's split into three. So before this election, before that split, Nigerian electoral map is skewed in favor of three states: Kano, Lagos, and Rivers. That's where you get your majority vote.
Yes.
Remember, the last election, Kano waited for Rivers to declare his number
before they declared theirs. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So one thing I do not know is the ability to manipulate that machine.
Mm-hmm.
But anywhere in the world, there are abilities to rig elections. One, you do not let the machine get there
Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm.
in time. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
Which they did in a place like Osun State.
Mm-hmm.
So that's likely to happen because you have to close an election. You have to close at the end, even when people are in line. You understand? But you can your talks can delay when the voting starts.
Mm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
If the voting is to start at 10, they can delay it till 12. What does it mean? You take machete and you scare some people in areas where you think you are not going to vote. Second, you can deny your opponent of 25% through thumbprinting that machine. You know?
Yeah.
Because no machine is foolproof. And then specific vote buying, which leads me to the arguments they were making against Tubi, that he has no structure. Social media is a structure for campaign. And he succeeded in that. But social media is not a structure for election rigging. It is party structures that rig elections conventionally. They are the ones that have mastered the act of mobilizing people. Amejiri here, market women there, because that's what we call party structure, which they also do in the US. That if you want blacks to vote for you, you have to go and buy Kentucky Fried Chicken and and you have to go and collect them in buses. That's what we call party structure. Because if you don't take even in the last election, all my cars were mobilized to go and take people to go and vote. My children did that. They just grabbed my car and said, we're going to this place to carry 4 people to go and vote. That's what we call party structure. On the day of Nigerian presidential election, to man 175 votes, you need 1.5 billion naira.
Wow.
Yes. One day expenditure.
Wow.
You have to pay your thugs. You have to provide food for the police. You have to move people to the election.
Yes.
What they call campaign will end very shortly. That's just rally. You understand? It is the rallies that you are stopping. But the forces that win for you an election will begin like 2 weeks before. The politics of whispering. Emirs and the King of Lagos, through the hierarchies of chieftaincy system that the British created decades ago. You know, those are there.
Yes.
Begin to tell the person, your people, whom to vote for. In the South, with Western education, that becomes more difficult. But it's not difficult in many states in the North. It is not. The Emir asked me to tell you to vote for. That comes in the last few days. Market women. This is the person the head of the market wants us to vote for. That is what is called party structure. And for you to deliver this message, this is the Ghana must go. that you give to your members.
Mm-hmm. And you don't think that there has been a deconstruction of that norm? That, in other words, Nigerians have come to a place where they say, we have suffered too much, and we're no longer going to hearken to such.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, the people you call Nigerians.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
If I break down the states they are going to win,
mm-hmm.
they are still along the tribal tripod.
But to harp on that, even in Yoruba areas, right?
Yes.
We're talking of an Oyo. Oyo historically has now been marginalized in the modern Yoruba context.
Yes.
I'm not saying they are victims or anything. I'm just saying we know in the modern Yoruba context, it's gone on and on. It went on through Chief Awolowo and all that. Isn't there a possibility of Tinubu not winning Oyo? Same with Taraba as well, the Jukums, the Thieves, all these places.
There is history behind your statement.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, Census was winning among the Yoruba.
Yes.
Clusters. Remember, the MPN did well. You remember that?
Yes.
Very good. So that fourth line among the Yoruba remains. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
Or could it deliver total victory? Can it deliver 25%? Yes. Can it deliver total victory? It's doubtful. But because that traditional fourth line has been there since the 50s.
The late 50s at least.
When the Obasanjo people will vote Akintola and not Awolowo.
Yes.
That was revived. That has been there and is still there. You understand? But ground that is still there, right? Is it enough for a total majority to carry the state? Or can it give you 25%? Yes, you can collect 25%. You're absolutely correct. What I do not know, there's a problem with how these things are structured. Do you know? $100 million votes. Are you aware?
400,000 votes.
400,000. Do you know?
Wow, I didn't know that.
Do you know Sanwo-Olu did not have 1 million votes in Lagos? A city of 40 million. How many votes do you think produce governors in Nigeria?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a scandal, yeah.
The number is so small.
In Anambra State, it was like 100 and something thousand for the winning governor.
Yes.
Winning candidate, yeah.
Wow.
Do you know the number is so small? You say, when I say Obi will carry Southeast, do you know that those are not more than like 3 million votes?
I know that is true. That is true. That is true. And the cancellation of votes in the Southeast and the South was the highest in the country as well. So that even makes it worse.
That's still going to happen because of violence and threat of violence.
That's right.
So, and that's why Kano Rivers produces 1 point something million votes.
Wow.
Kano produces 1 point something million votes. And those.
But by the way, just as an aside, the whole idea of Kano having a larger population than Lagos is something that I find to be absolutely incredible.
So you have to start with the census of the 50s and the 60s.
Yep.
Because, and Nigerians like to deceive itself. We're going to have another census in April. And everybody knows Kano has more local governments
Than
Lagos.
than any other state in the country. You understand? So the vote, because again, politicians know what they are going to derive from this census in terms of allocation.
Mm-hmm.
So they trigger the mechanism to increase the numbers,
Mm-hmm.
which they will do come April.
Mm-hmm.
In 25, 28 years' time, Nigerians' population at its current projection
Mm-hmm.
is 450 million. So our problems are even yet to start.
Yeah.
So when they do this census, if they don't abort it, I'm expecting that they tell us we're 300 million or something like that. Because all of them will just know that
Inflation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So
That's it.
so
They won't be able to create new local
mm-hmm.
governments, take more allocations from the center.
Mm-hmm. Let me given your projection that perhaps Tinubu is a front runner in this election, and I suspect that you suggest that he's going to win in the first ballot, that he's not going to go into a run.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, but let's imagine that Tinubu becomes the president-elect. Have you followed what would seem to some of us to be a clear case of mental and cognitive decline and physical, degradation in the man?
Physical challenges.
And so if you have seen it, how do you imagine that affecting the mood of Nigeria and the prospects of Nigeria for the next 4 years and perhaps 8 years that he could be president?
In pidgin English, they will say, I feel sorry for you. It's not correct language.
I feel sorry for you.
I feel sorry for you.
Yes.
Because you are confusing politics with governance.
Yes.
You are assuming that the purpose of politics is to deliver development.
Yes.
It is not so. It can deliver failure. You understand? Fundamentally, you can use power to create state capture. And state capture is a phenomenon in which a few people look at the resources of the nation and meet behind your back, outside of your podcast, and say, Emeka, yours is Samfara gold. And the person who has articulated that model is actually Atiku. Because he believes in it fundamentally. That why don't you dispose of the University of Ibadan? And that's who will leave us alone. Okay, we buy it.
Yes.
He can pay them.
Yes.
We are not their employer.
Yes.
What is our problem? So, Tinubu will produce state capture. You understand? And in that phenomenon of state capture, which you find Ramaphosa in South Africa, in which, okay, these are the highlights of economic centers in the Republic. Why can't we allocate segments to specific people? And maybe they will deliver. If it does state capture, you don't have to be healthy.
Yep.
You just have to say the remaining oil blocks, I'm giving it to people from my states. Nigeria has two sources of wealth. NMPC, I'm giving it to governor of central bank will be managed by. So when you do state capture, right, it is not a physical exercise that is demanding. You understand? It is just a mental exercise that you can accomplish, even in your hospital bed in London.
Yeah.
Now, even I'll say Nigeria is a youthful population, 200 million people. You need an energetic president, all well and good. But that is a development model you are producing. They kill some people in Bauchi. I want to go and sympathize and visit them. State capture, you don't have to. Or I want to supervise the infrastructure. Look, how many ministers have Buhari supervised? Sometimes he does not even remember the names of his ministers. It took him a while to remember the name of his vice president.
Of his political party, even the meaning of.
Have you ever seen a state where it's maximum security prison in Abuja?
It's sacked by terrorists.
And the Minister of Interior Affairs, Ralph Aregbe, retains his job. He has only gotten rid of one minister.
Yeah.
In 8 years.
This lady. Ooh, was it the lady?
There's the youth call lady.
Yes.
Okay.
One Shitu.
Yes.
He doesn't police you. He doesn't.
I think the Minister of Sports, the Minister of Sports in his first.
Shitu.
Yes.
Something Shitu. How many ministers did he sack? In the typical analysis of African politics, the big man, you won't call him a big man, but he follows a vicious model.
Yeah.
Not via the agency of the big man who is coming to kill you.
What do you think? There's this wild card that I've always had. I've always, we can see the structure you laid out is actually very accurate. But there's a wild card, which happened in the last elections. A switch from Tinubu as the front runner to the governors in the north switching to an Atiku.
That has been suggested. But we will not know this until 2 weeks to the election. Because you are talking about internal conversations within the party. Now, there are two ongoing criticisms that Aso Rock is not funding Tinubu's campaign. I think that is a public. I think members of the public say that the federal government
is not, even that Buhari seemed a reluctant campaigner.
It's not funding. And second, he did not want to campaign. But they brought him out. In bringing him out, we do not know whether that is a signal. You understand? Suppose there's a switch. I don't think that switch can produce Atiku as the country's president. In fact, Obi has a better chance than Atiku. Obi is likely to actually have more votes than Atiku. Even if they do that switch. Because that switch is not going to affect the South.
That's true.
That is the problem. You can't go to the heartland of Igbo land now and say vote for
Atiku. Nope.
They have their own son. So if Obi is a spoiler in the final analysis, the damage will be more, in my opinion, to Atiku than to Tinubu. It will spoil both of them. There's no doubt about that. But the casualty, in my own calculation, and politics is a 24-hour opinion. You understand? So we play this podcast in a month's time.
we could either look prophetic or dumb.
All the earlier segments in the next 10 years. For the segment of electoral calculation, it is all just what I know as of the time I am talking to you.
Yes.
Because there are big elephants in the room.
Sure.
Let me announce that Tinubu collapsed at the last rally in Lagos. That changes the dynamics.
That's true. That's true.
So the dynamics of health, the dynamics of somebody collapsing in a campaign, the dynamics of the switch that you mentioned.
Yes.
But that switch cannot be produced by article. It can only be produced by emirs in combination.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
the kings and the owners of Nigeria.
the owners of Nigeria.
Emirs in London.
Yes.
There are three
Good book.
the kings, the businessmen, and the military. If they meet, they can do the switch.
Do you think the military is still a factor in Nigeria?
Why do you think they go to Babangida, people,
That's true.
and they go to Obasanjo all the time? Why do you think they go to Danjuma?
Yeah.
Why do you think they even bother people that they should allow them their peace, like Yaradua's mother?
Yeah. Oh, that's something, isn't it?
Yep.
So let me, because you've been quite generous with your time, and I'd like to sort of conclude my last couple of questions to return to your personal practice as an intellectual, as a historian, as a Nigerian, as an African. So there is this phenomenon of the brain drain out of Nigeria, out of Africa, that in some ways the best that we have to offer now are located outside of Nigeria and Africa. Do you have practical suggestions? And I know that you said something about spending half of the year effectively in Nigeria, going back to your roots. But on a broader level, do you have practical suggestions for how to reverse the negative effects of the brain drain across various disciplines and professions in Nigeria and Africa?
So, Africa has been a continent of movements. That is how it's been constituted for a long time. The area of Cameroon, Nigeria produced the Bantu movement that ultimately led to what we call Southern African places like that. And internal migrations are common. When Boutros Ghali was sacked as Secretary of the United Nations, he was looking for something valuable to do with his time. And he set up the Afro-Arab Summit, of which once in a while I was drafted into. And Mrs. Mubarak was a host. Around that region alone, 2 million people move in a year. Remember Palestinians doing manual labor. So we have massive internal movements. Then 13.5 million between the 15th and the 19th century. They moved. Their muscle power was needed. And then we had small number diaspora of colonization. And beginning from the Nigerian Civil War, the number began to increase. Somalia, moving to Minnesota, part of Boston, Liberia, Sierra Leone, Ethiopia, Eritrea. So those movements have been there. Are they going to stop? They won't stop because of the demand supply push factor. The specific segment of your interest are skills, brain power. The previous one was muscle power. And now we have brain power thrown into academic plantations. Because there are different forms of plantations. One is just enforced and the other is voluntary. Can you stop it? No. Because individuals look for the best for themselves in society. Or societies where they think they can use their skills to maximize their own earnings and potentials. That's one side. Second, where they are going, they are not doing them a favor. Canada is not doing anybody a favor. US is not doing any Nigerian a favor. UK looking for school teachers and doctors is not doing anybody a favor. They are meeting the contingencies of their own labor shortage.
Mm-hmm.
Today, there's a massive labor shortage of IT in Germany. They are very generous towards our people. And they are having declining population. Part of what we call the abortion debate in the US, people don't understand that debate very well. Is to say white people produce more kids so that you are not going to become minorities in your country. So there is that demand sector, which is not going to stop until the need for that labor reduces. But there are shortages in low-level jobs in medical fields, shortages in low-level jobs, security and cleaning. These are massive shortages. In the state of Texas, Austin is a full employment city where I live. We don't have people to do small jobs. They would ask you for $20 an hour. They are looking for thousands of people to manage children with disability, all forms of disability. So the consequences now, which is not what we're talking about, is that Africa is now a major supplier of technical aids to the US and to Europe. We are the one actually giving them aids. It's not the other way around.
Yes.
And we continue to give them aids. Can we mitigate this crisis? You can only pay salaries to the extent of revenues you generate.
Mm-hmm.
Even when you eliminate corruption, how much can Mali pay people? How much can Ghana pay people? Even if you eliminate corruption, how much can Nigerian pay people? And for as long as you are not able to pay people, and they understand how much they earn in other places, they will continue to go. Can you do Castro, the Castro model under Cuba? What did he do? Your certificate is in his pocket.
Yeah.
And until he released a certificate, you could not leave the country.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Nigeria has lost that argument in various ways because we now produce Nigerians that the state has not funded their education in nursery. The state has not contributed to their elementary school. The state did not contribute to their high school. And the state did not contribute to their university education. Do you know we now have Nigerians like that? Yes. If you go to Covenant, you are born in Babcock. From elementary, nursery to PhD is within your campus. And the Ogun State government or the federal government did not contribute anything. It's your parents who paid for it. Can we say your parents paid for education and you cannot go to UK? We cannot say that. What about those who are now funded with Madam Fodio University, University of Ibadan? Now they can begin to say, we are the one who sent you to school. We may do what they do. Maybe to those that the federal and state government sent to school, maybe they can say, give us your service for 3 years. Similar to extending the youth call for them. They do similar things in the US. Okay, we'll forgive you your loan. If you're a doctor, you can go and work in a rural area. Maybe they can come up with those kind of incentives. Now, diasporas are complicated in developing the homeland. We have the successful case of Israel. Some people will argue maybe the only successful one, in which is diaspora defined it, lobbied for it to receive the largest annual donations and sustain it through pilgrimages and visits and tourism. It doesn't have a cash flow problem. Africans were now witnessing remittances. And you could see where those remittances are heavy, as in southern Nigeria, you can see the impact on the landscape. And you can see places like Gambia, where its own annual revenue is like 250 million, or the remittance is about 600 million.
Wow.
You can see it in Cape Verde, where the citizens who live outside are responsible for many of those mansions. And the remittances produce substantial wealth. If the state is non-corrupt and if it's running well, they can create diaspora tax. Not a big amount of money. Like America, you are home to bury your mom. Welcome to immigration. You've collected your luggage, but you cannot leave the airport until you give us $200. Has that been done? It was only 2 years ago that China actually abolished that.
Wow.
If you train abroad and you are going back, you have to pay $3,000.
Wow.
Yes.
Huh.
But they've stopped it. Because the number that leaves China is similar to the number that re-enters.
Wow.
Yes. So there's no need to use force. And if the state is less corrupt, they can do what they're doing now, diaspora bonds, diaspora funds, and people are committed to the development of the country. And, communities will come up over time to tap into these resources because we are not permanent immigrants. We are transnationalists. The problem is that We are funding American companies. Anytime you travel Delta, imagine that is Nigerian Airways.
Yeah.
Imagine that is Peace Airways that you are giving that $3,000 to. And they are spending it to create jobs in Nigeria, to fix the airport. But their own inefficiencies are also reducing what they can make from this. But as transnationalists, anybody who goes to Nigeria once a year, that's an inflow of $10,000. You go to a village, you do welcome party, send-off party, you're building a house, you are developing that community through consumption, through investments, through gifts. A funeral by a successful person in Houston who wants to bury his parents, that's an inflow of $40,000 to Abriba. So that inflow means that we have things to mitigate them. So, but there are not all skills will damage the country. Some you can quickly produce them. You can quickly produce nurses and technicians. Some you cannot quickly produce, like PhDs, professors, doctors. You cannot quickly manufacture those. So we also have to disaggregate. I won't worry if somebody fails his WAEC, F9, or subjects. Let him leave the country. I don't worry about it. Because that's a better fortune for him. That's a better fortune, you understand? But I worry about a cardiologist. I worry. How many neurosurgeons we have? I worry about those people. So we also have to disaggregate and say, in these areas of need, this is what we have to do. Areas that are very, very, very difficult. I don't worry so much about the humanities because within 6 years of serious work and dedicated work, you can produce 100 PhDs and recirculate them very quickly. Backup produced 170 this last graduation.
Wow.
But there are some I worry about. Producing a cardiologist, producing a pathologist, producing a neurosurgeon, I will worry. What I'm saying is we still have to disaggregate and say in these areas that require heavy training, slow processes, serious apprenticeship, what can we do to mitigate? Thank you. There can be no success without successors. And part of the mistakes we make is our failure to reproduce back home. That communities must reproduce. Our organic communities, they reproduce. And in reproducing not just children, reproduction of institutions, reproductions of kinship values, even reproduction of witches, which we need for Pentecostalists to make a living, you understand? Because without witches, they won't make their own money. But there are, let me use this book. This is my latest book. It's a massive book. It's on refugees.
Mm-hmm.
It's very massive. So, There are various models of doing scholarship.
Wow.
This took 7 years to put together. And data from Sierra Leone and Liberia, Rwanda, Nigeria, Central Africa, refugee producing areas. And I'm doing some other works on internally displaced people. And I'm part of a team that is tracking the movement of people through footpaths and roads. For instance, near me to Sokoto is nearer than Sokoto to Lagos. And they are tracking it. There's a film on Malian traders in Lagos, ancient ways of doing things, and how we can revive them. Some projects, by their very nature, like this refugee book, they are collaborative. In other words, you have to pool resources to do them. Like I'm mapping Lagos-Ibadan Road, looking at what people do along the streets. More churches than businesses. So you need field assistance. And you need collaboration. That's one area. Second, when we started our career, we were not grant-oriented scholars. And some of us grew from the tradition that, why are you criticizing the West and asking them for money to fund your research? And some of us have remained consistent with that tradition. When you are consistent with that tradition, you must develop the agencies of collaborations. My forthcoming handbook is the Handbook of Kenya, in which I collaborated with two of my colleagues to write that 2-volume massive handbook. Trips to Kenya, trips to the US. So that's one. The other one is a training process, a sort of apprentice process in which you basically say, okay, you cannot reproduce this person unless you train the person. And then you have frontier scholarship. Frontier scholarship in which you alone cannot collect the data. I did a book, the very first one, on African islands. You know those tiny dots on the map? Comoros, Fernando Po, Sao Tome, Cape Verde. You need people who have been doing the research in those places to accumulate their data, because the data does not speak to one another. The data is not speaking to one another. And I have the gift of accumulating many of those things in books like on disability, in which this person writes on the physically challenged in Zimbabwe, that person writes on homes for blind people in the Gambia, and you accumulate them. And you have my own anomaly, in which over the years I'm actually good in 11 disciplines. And I follow the conversations in them. I am at home in literature. You can do this entire interview on literature, and I will keep answering your question. This year I'm releasing 2 books on memoirs. I put together memoirs by Africans, and I wrote 2 books for them. Both will be released in April. So, and I'm releasing 2 books on social media.
So you are 70, amazingly accomplished as a teacher, as a historian, as an author, what challenges have you set for yourself in the future? Where do you go from this place of tremendous achievement as a scholar? What are some of the goals that you've set for yourself that continue to, as it were?
So I've already spent the next 5 years.
You've spent the years. Yes.
Because, so can you imagine a person who held a meeting with a publishing house and say, give me a contract for 50 books?
Ooh.
Wow.
50 books.
So I signed a contract with Paragraphs on handbooks.
Oh my God.
Of different topics on Africa.
Yes.
So we've released the handbooks of colonial Africa, post-colonial Africa. We've released the handbook of Africa in the global world, handbook of Africa in world politics, handbook of African political economy. We released 3 volumes on handbooks of African women. I will be releasing shortly handbooks of African Christianity. We've released the handbook of African Islam, handbook of African indigenous
religions.
I'm not talking about 300 pages. I'm talking about massive books.
Whoa.
That kind of expansive imagination means you are going to walk. You are going to keep walking until you are dead. And then I approached Cambridge to give me a contract on the history of Nigeria, and I negotiated 3 volumes. I started with volume 3, which is out, Understanding Modern Nigeria, Cambridge University Press, 700 pages. You can Google the book after the interview.
Yes.
Understanding Modern Nigeria. And I've completed for them Understanding Colonial Nigeria. In print, it will be 700 pages.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
And I will now move to Understanding Colonial Nigeria. Can you imagine somebody who walks to a publishing house and say, let me write a history of Nigeria in 3 volumes, over 2,000 pages?
Whoa. Whoa. Wow.
So that one is there. And then I contracted with University of Rochester Press. Decolonizing African Studies. The first volume is out.
Wow.
Oh yeah, I saw that one.
It's 700
I
pages.
saw that one. Yeah, I love that.
I'm completing for them what I call edible studies, which is going to be 700 pages.
Oh my gosh.
So, in the next 5 years, even if you maximize my time and double it, I already have something to do.
Wow.
I have a few questions on that. Like, so I know your original discipline is history. And
yes, but beyond that.
Yeah, so I wanted you to name the disciplines you have. 2, the question was always why. The question is always why history? You know, people, there are some, for those who listen later on, and there are people who are always like, yeah, you know, who cares about history? What does it matter? What matters is now. You know, all this, I too sabi. All these things. You know, the question is why does history matter to a modern Nigerian?
But they are right to pose a question.
True.
Actually, whenever they pose that question, I'm never offended. I'm never offended because it is one of the missions of a discipline to display its own relevance. Otherwise, you will become extinct or you become irrelevant. Second, it is also the business of the nation to work on the promotion of that history. bear in mind, because they are saying they don't want Biafra, they don't want civil war, they abolish the study of history, which they are bringing back.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot have a degree in the state of Texas without doing Texas history
Mm-hmm.
and American history. So nobody will pose that question. And third, anytime, anywhere where you do not have a diversified economy, most disciplines are useless.
Mm.
It's not just history. People will say, what do I do with BA Religious Studies? What do you want me to do with BA in English? They will even ask you, what do you want me to do with BSc Chemistry? It is not just history. Because the absorptive capacity of all disciplines is the diversified economy that you create, where everybody can have a space to put the food on their table.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody is going to ask you that question if after having BA in Religious Studies, there's a job for him to do.
Mm-hmm.
If you finish BA History, University of Abuja, and you can have a job, who's going to ask you that question? Nobody will. The discipline becomes useless because it can feed you.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? So, even in the US Academy, how many disciplines are useful?
Mm.
Many of them are not useful in terms of how they define it in Nigeria. Only 5 of them will give you a job. The most useful degree in the US is engineering.
Mm-hmm.
Right now.
You don't need a second degree. It is the most useful degree that if you enter the university, you can say, in 4 years' time, when I leave, I have a certificate to eat.
Certificate to eat.
It's not a Nigerian phenomenon. People will ask you the question too here in the US, what do I do with history? And then, to what extent do we inculcate skills? You know, you cannot disconnect skills from the way you train people. Check the training in the US. Check from the word go how excessive payment, high cost of labor have forced you to be able to paint your house, have forced you to fix your car. Through manuals, people can fix their cars.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to say everything you want to fix in your car, you will calling people to do it. You're wasting a lot of your money. So you find people saying, I can go and learn how to do something and use that to reduce the running cost, the maintenance cost of my house. And you see how, as people grow up in this system, you cultivate one skill or another as part of the school system. I think we're also reaching that in Nigeria. That people are now maximizing their vacations. When ASU was on strike, students were not stupid. They already know education is a scam. Everybody is being deceived. Some of them went to go and acquire skills on their own, in partnership with their parents. So people are also changing and realizing that this degree is not going to, unless you want to japa.
Yeah.
That if you are not careful with that degree, you are going to suffer.
So what other disciplines? I'm guessing you're good in like literature. You've already said that. History.
I'm good in religious studies.
Oh.
I've written books on Shango, Eshu, which is my favorite gods of all time.
Eshu, yeah.
I've written on Yemaja, Orisha generally. I've done 2 recent books. I wrote one on religious beliefs. I released a book on sacred words. You know what sacred words are?
In Yoruba mythology.
Sacred words are in origin.
Oh, okay, yes. I think I have. Well, you can explain it though.
You know when you say the Lord is your shepherd and you recite it
Mhm.
before you enter the bus taking you to the So, when I was young, I was taking a lot of Islamic medicine. They will write a passage of the Quran on tablets. They will wash it into a cup, and I will drink it. Those are sacred words. And you know what we call incantation? Incantations are sacred words. Horses, conch incantations. These are sacred words. And these sacred words produce magic. You understand? Without sacred words, Adeboye will not make money from you. Because after praying for you, they become mysterious. And they turn you into confusion. Kalumara, Kilimanjaro, Fatima, Kamusi, Apana, Arif, Vujanja. Doing that, they begin to mediate a relationship between you and higher forces. And those sacred words, you cannot interpret them. They have to be interpreted for you. Because after those sacred words have been offered, the sweat all over his body, his heart rate will now reduce. And I will say, Meka, this is the message that God sent to me. Half of your salary, beginning from February 1, you should give to Toyin Falola.
Meka, you didn't hear the sacred.
What choice do I have?
You didn't say that I have to come to Kenjibe.
Well, I'll come and live in your house, no problem. There are plenty of books to read.
The second one did not say you should come to my house. You may be homeless for all we care.
Sacred words allow priests, herbalists to become interpreters. You understand? They become interpreters with power superior to you. You find it in Sufism. All religions produce sacred words. You understand?
You go to a Dibia.
You remember, Jesus Christ said, with faith, you can ask the mountain to shift.
And they would.
And it would. But it has to be preceded by sacred words. You're not going to say that in English.
Martin will say, So, oh my.
This has been
it's been a really riveting. So let me.
Oh yeah, I have. Before you get sorry. Before you get there, I just since I believe like Kenneth Dike was one of the, if not the pioneer of African history or Nigerian history. Whether you had, because a lot of the people that came out of the Kenneth Dike school have written very fantastic, have had great scholarships, have written really fantastic works. Even Professor Banji Akintoye, who I think has one of the best, if not the best, one of the best books. Sorry, I hear you've written a lot of books on you, but one of the best books on Yoruba history.
He was my supervisor until he became a senator, by the way.
Okay, so I wanted to find that part I didn't know. I wanted to find out what might have been, because I know you started off in Ife and all that.
Then I moved to Shegun Shoba.
Okay, so if I'm not,
I moved from the capital brutalist to a socialist.
If I'm not wrong, both of them studied under Kenneth, Dike, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, in
Ibadan. Aye.
So he had all the benefits of the pioneer. And remember, in combination with being an administrator, university vice chancellor,
At the time.
also a career diplomat as the ambassador of Biafra. And after his return, chancellors of universities. So the space of his control and activities, like half a century, you understand? And in various roles and responsibilities. But my favorite story is not about his contribution to academia. My favorite is about a park named after him. And the governor was walking by the park. And it's not my job to embarrass fellow Nigerians. You can find out this information by yourself. And the governor looked at the piece of land and said, let's redistribute this land and put some mansions there.
Oh, boy.
I'm guessing it happened.
But the good news is not a full animal who did it.
Oh, boy.
So you can't accuse him of hating Igbo people.
Yeah.
I mean, not Awolowo's son. Who did
Yeah.
it.
I can imagine.
He's an Igbo man. So that's fine. Internal cannibalism, it's not an offense.
Internal cannibalism, yes. Oh, my gosh.
But find out what.
Yeah.
I'm going to find out the name, but I think okay himself, if he wanted to tell stories about this, he will get flustered right now. He will get flustered with these guys.
Storyteller, and that would be a wonderful story.
Yes.
How you remove an iconic figure and say, let's use the land.
Let's build mansions.
Yeah.
It's a familiar story. You know, what used to be the zoo in Enugu, and so many other monuments in Enugu have disappeared. And
yes, but elite behavior, because is a mansion no more important than a lion?
of course, yes, it goes without saying.
It's a Rolls Royce on a bad road.
Yes,
Not better.
than a tree in a park. Yes.
Why don't you look at more women and more Lusho and more girlfriends than looking at Iroko trees
Yes. Yeah.
put together in an horticultural garden? Is Ikebe not more lovely?
Yes.
What conversation can you generate from hibiscus?
Yes.
Far better than hips and size 48.
Yes. Yeah. I mean,
These are elite behavior.
yes.
The way you're elite
Yes.
will determine what you do with your space.
That's true. That's true.
If you go to Nigeria, and I take you to many cities, suppose you don't love to drink, and suppose you are not interested in women, what are you doing in Enugu?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
That is. on
What
point.
else is there to do?
I mean,
Yeah.
truth.
What else is there to do?
It's the truth.
And you find, I remember years ago I had a friend who put it in his head that the way to seduce women was to write a poem for them. So he composed a poem And any woman he was interested in, after talking to her for a while, he said, "Oh, go and get a piece of paper. You just inspired a poem." And he'll write for this woman a poem that he'd given to at least 50 other women. But he would tell each one that she just inspired the poem. And often, the women he gave the poems to, he will be walking and see where they tore up the piece of paper and threw the thing on the floor. And I could imagine them saying, "Na poem we go chop." You know, and you sort of see this. And I actually wanted to ask a question about it, because for a scholar of your scope and ambition and productivity, you're producing all these books. You have a contract with one publisher to do 50 books on different facets of the African experience. And yet you and I come from a space where most people do not mock the idea of leisure reading. Okay? There's this disciplinary bias where I remember just recently I posted about Ngugi's 80